biggest reason this fight is difficult to follow isn't the cuts, it's how many times it breaks the 180-degree rule. The 180-degree rule is a filmmaking rule that helps things remain clear and easy to follow. You see it all the time in dialogue scenes. See how the kid's on the right side of the screen, and then when we cut to this other shot, he's still on the right side of the screen? Well, let's take Michelle Yeoh fighting Zhang Ziyi in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Let's draw an imaginary line between the two of them. Now, if we put the camera over here, Michelle Yeoh is on the right side of the screen. And if we put the camera over here, we can see Zhang Ziyi's face, but Michelle Yeoh is still on the right side of the screen, so it's easy for us to follow. We can put the camera anywhere we want over here, and it'll be easy for our brains to figure out what's going on. But if we break the 180-degree rule and put the camera somewhere over here, now the characters flip sides. Now Michelle Yeoh is on the left side of the screen. It takes our brain a little moment to figure out that they've switched sides, and it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal when you do it rapidly like this. Now, by the time our brains figure out who's on which side of the screen, we're already on to the next shot. So for fight scenes, it can make the action feel faster than it really is. That's why when a director isn't confident in the action, they flip back and forth like this all the time. By the end of the fight, we feel like something fast and frenetic happened, but really, instead of feeling like we saw some cool action, we feel a little frazzled because it overloaded our brain trying to follow it. This brings us back to the Game of Thrones sword fight between Brienne of Tarth and the Hound. Yeah, there are a hell of a lot of cuts, but that's not the problem. Let's draw attention to how many times it breaks the 180-degree rule. Every time the Hound is on the right side of the screen, things will be blue. Every time he's on the left side of the screen, we'll make it red. And anytime they're sort of just lined up towards the camera and you can't really tell who's on which side, well, we'll make it green. So now when we watch the fight and pay attention to the colors, you can see how often it breaks the 180-degree rule, trying to overload you, trying to make it seem faster than it really is. This isn't an accident, it's deliberately being done. Sometimes a fight scene like this one from the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier will cut a shot in half and just randomly flip it so that it breaks the 180-degree rule even though they didn't have a camera on the other side of the fight. It's weird, but it happens a lot. And when a fight feels like it's unclear, yeah, it has something to do with the cuts. But most of the time, this is the biggest factor. You can break the 180-degree rule at certain times in a good way though, like the end of this fight between the Hound and Brienne of Tarth. Once we notice that Brienne is doing the same right punch over and over, we can break the 180-degree rule over and over as well, because it doesn't take much for our brains to follow the action. So when the choreography repeats itself, feel free to break the 180-degree rule. But when there's variety happening and you want the audience to be able to follow it and appreciate the action and feel like they saw something cool, breaking the 180-degree rule like this does the opposite. Here I've taken the opening of the fight and horizontally flipped some of the shots so that it never breaks the 180-degree rule and the Hound is always on the same side. It's much easier to follow than the original version. It's perfectly fine to break this rule in fight scenes. The problem is that filmmakers usually aren't breaking this rule to make things more clear. They're usually using it as a crutch. If you need a little more proof that it's the 180-degree rule and not the cuts that are the problem, overall the fight between Brienne and the Hound has 1.3 cuts per second. This section of Chun-Li versus Vega in Street Fighter II the animated movie has 1.1 cuts per second. That's pretty much the same. In fact, this one has a lot more shots that zoom way in and way back out. On paper, it should be more difficult to follow, but it's not. That's because out of this entire clip, it only breaks the 180-degree rule once. It breaks it here when Chun-Li grabs the beam and starts moving in a different direction. You probably didn't even realize that it had broken the 180-degree rule when it happened, because the filmmakers used that break to increase the clarity of the fight scene. If you want to see what I think is one of the most beautifully made animated fight scenes, click here to check out my breakdown of the Ruby Red trailer by Monty Ohm. Or if you want to hear me rag on the Stuntmen React guys a little bit more, click this video and enjoy.